This is the key to Hyundai's smallest but grandest saloon in the country, introducing the Grand i10. And its price is starting at 1.9 million Kenya shillings. Do you reckon it is the grandest vehicle in its class? Let's find out by doing a walk around of this particular vehicle. So as you can see here, this particular car is amazing. It's called that Hyundai Q. It's called the fluid design that Hyundai has employed on all their models, from the Santa Fe to the Tucson to the Creta and so many others. But that's not the story. The story is this is a spiritual successor to the Hyundai Atos. Remember that car in the 90s, the small tiny car that actually made Hyundai become very popular? This is the successor. 2020, amazing things. It's all about efficiency, comfort and style, and attracting the younger generation. So as you can see, from the grille, hexagonal with chrome tips, just to give this car that premium feel, and extends all the way to the bumper and the front side skirts, just to give this car that jeune we keep on talking about. As you move closer over here, then you can see the quadratic lights. They're clear, so they help you see the road visibly at night. Of course, they're halogens, but in higher spec models, you probably get xenons or LEDs. This is 2020, and of course, you do have also side running lights on the higher spec model of the Grand i10. So what's so grand about the side profile? Well, as you can see here, the panels, as well as you can see here, huge doors to facilitate easy entry and exit, both for passenger and driver. Amazing things, because now this car, not only does it look small, but inside matters are quite different. Spacious, comfortable, and of course, gives you that absolute value for money that you so desire. It comes with 14-inch rims, alloy wheels actually, and on the higher speed you can probably get 15s and 16s, depending on your taste and preference. Now moving over to the side, it's a saloon. It's a box type saloon, as you can see. So the design comes across as a vehicle that has been designed with the younger family in mind. The boot is very spacious. We're going to see what Mr. Mini is going to say about the boot, and of course the design cues over here. So this, I assume, was supposed to mimic a spoiler, which actually makes it look very good. And of course this chrome grille on this panel, and the lights extend all the way and wrap around to the sides, giving this car that jeune that we keep on talking about. But question is, do you reckon this particular car is far much better than the Volkswagen Polo Saloon or the Suzuki Swift? Let's get inside and see if matters are different in this particular Grand i10. You've seen from the walk around how Hyundai have done the fluid design theme on the exterior of this particular car. But question is, does that theme also flow inside the cabin of the Grand i10? Step in and let's see. So what Hyundai have done is actually to create an illusion of space. I can tell you from the exterior, this car looks a little bit small, but when you get inside, the amount of space is amazing. And this comes down to the clever packaging by Hyundai on the dashboard and on the seats. And I can tell you this design is called the forward cabin design, and many manufacturers are now employing it on their cars to create that space and that illusion that cars are actually spacious inside. So let's start with the dashboard. It's a two-tone design basically by Hyundai with a circular theme. So you can see circular vents, circular knobs and switches, creates a line of symmetry in most of the things. And symmetry is important when you're developing and designing a vehicle. Center console, as you can see here, you do have a monochrome display. So right below it, you do have switches over here. Circular vents and switches, you have the AC or climate control. So basically able to vary the cabin temperature quite easily in the Grand i10. And right below it, you have plenty of cubby holes and spaces. You can actually fit your cell phone over here. And of course, you have a USB port, auxiliary port, and of course, you do have a charging port to charge your various devices while in the Grand i10. Remember, this particular car is a city car. It's a sub 4 meter vehicle, so it's actually used for the city. So the amount of space and practicality is so important that anybody who's driving this car will feel very comfortable from the word go. That is how Hyundai have implemented this Grand i10 design theme in the cabin. Now, moving over to the gearbox console, is standard. Actually, it's just a one piece. It's connected towards the center console, and this is a 6-speed automatic with Tiptronic functionality. And we're going to test that later when we do the on-road demonstration of the Grand i10. There's plenty of cables and spaces here right next to the gearbox console, so you can actually put your cup holders. One thing that I've loved is the asymmetrical design of the cup holder. So you can have one big flask over here and one small cup holder to hold your drinks or bottles. So it's asymmetrical, which is interesting because Hyundai actually thought about making sure that you can fit different types of designs of cups while you're in traffic in Nairobi. Obviously, as you can see, I do have also space for your keys, the traditional handbrake that we never see these days, and of course at the back here you do have vents for the rear passengers. Now moving over to the instrument cluster, as you can see, it's on a backlight of blue and white, just to give you that feeling that you're reading all the information and acquiring the information as you drive. Remember, when you're driving, your eyes need to focus on the road, so the blue and white background just gives this car that thing that you're able to see, and from a glance you're able to see all the vital readings. On the left hand side is the tachometer, right hand side you do have the temperature and fuel gauge, and of course in the middle is the speedometer, and just right below it is actually digital information display that gives you the range, what kind of gear you're in, if the doors are open, the odometer, and so much more. The steering is a 3-spoke one. As you can tell here, it's a plastic trim with soft rubber on the side, and then something interesting, the trip computer has been removed from the instrument cluster into one of the buttons on the steering wheel, so you can actually reset and do trip recordings while pressing on these satellite buttons that have been removed from the main instrument cluster. The seats are actually very comfortable. As you can see, I can fit Big Boy, is comfortable. Lumbar support is standard in this particular car. You can actually adjust the steering height and reach such you're able to be very comfortable in the Grand i10. I'm going to hand over the reins to Mr. Mirigi, who's our resident comfort expert, and going to give us a lowdown on the load capacity of this Grand i10, the seating capacity, and of course the different aspects of the audio system on this particular car.
So when it comes to technology, the Hyundai Grand i10 has you covered. For a car in this class, they have done a really good job of making sure that it has everything that you need. So, beginning of course now with the music system, because like Trevor mentioned, this is a car for the young millennials. We have of course now a music system over here, 2 speakers in the front, another 2 in the back. Does not have Bluetooth, but it does have auxiliary in and USB, giving you a wide range of flexibility for the kind of music that people are listening to nowadays. One other thing that I have to mention, of course, now is this air conditioning system, which has vents going all the way to the rear. So you actually can heat and cool both the front and the rear passengers. Speaking of the rear, we also have rear parking sensors, which is again something that you don't generally tend to see in this class. In terms of storage, like Trevor had mentioned, there's a wide storage area in the front here, loads of space in the glove compartment and each of the doors. But let's check into the back to see just how much space there is for people and the stuff they need to carry. Coming round to the back of the Hyundai Grand i10, and this, in my opinion, is the reason why it's called the Grand, because this is where you start to feel that premium nature that has given it that name. There's loads of space in here. This seat is set to Trevor's driving position. He's 6'1", I am 5'9", and as you can see, the chair is just about touching me, but I'm actually pretty comfortable at the back here. There's loads of space for my feet under the chair. It's actually very comfortable, I'd say, for very easily 2 adults can sit here at the back. In terms of power, we have one additional 12-volt socket at the back here, which again is not something you generally tend to see in cars of this class, and air conditioning vents for the people at the back, meaning you can keep yourself heated or cooled. All you have at the back here, of course, now is just controls for the blower, the speed of the fan that's blowing out the air on the back here. In terms of storage, we have very large door bins in each of the rear doors, big enough to carry a 1-liter bottle of water, and we actually do have cup holders in here in the seats. The seats are actually very comfortable. A lot of the time when people are thinking luxury, first thing that comes to mind is leather, but you forget that at the end of the day, it's how you feel. And these seats feel very nice when you're sitting them. It's a very nice material to touch and feel, and it feels a lot more premium than it actually is. One thing that I also have to mention is that this car has a higher roof line than a lot of cars in this class. Usually this is something that happens because it's built for the Indian market. Advantage of this entirely high roof line means that there's loads of space. Not only do you feel like it's spacious, it actually is spacious. Incredible amount of space in the cabin makes the car feel bigger than it actually is. The other thing that helps with that is just how large these windows are. Very big, very wide, and the doors also open up very wide to make it very easy for you to get in and get out of this vehicle. But how much can this thing carry? Let's check out the boot to see how much you can carry. Coming round to the back of the Hyundai Grand i10, and you have to use the key to open the boot, and it opens to reveal a wide, massive, very usable 400 liters of boot capacity. The other thing that you have to note inside here is that we have a full-size spare tire with alloys that match the rest of the car. But it's time to take this on the road and see what this has to offer as a driving experience.
we've seen what the Grand i10 is all about. It's comfortable, it's practical enough, and of course it's built for the urban commute. So from church to home, from work to home, school, shopping, that kind of thing, it is actually built for the urban commute in a very comfortable and practical manner. But we want to find out how it feels on the road. So obviously, where do we start? We start with the engine. Now Hyundai have actually named this particular engine the Kappa engine. This particular engine, the Kappa engine, actually has 1.2 liter displacement, or 1200 cc in other terms. Now 1200 cc with variable valve timing, electronic control system that allows this car to breathe better and be more efficient. Now the outcome is it produces 64 kilowatts and 120 newton meters of torque. That power is sent to the front wheels courtesy of a very smooth shifting 6-speed automatic. None of that lethargic CVT gearbox that we see on other vehicles, but this is a proper automatic. It is very good, it is very smooth, and allows this car to be very efficient. So for example, now I'm actually slowing down and I want to just accelerate, so I'm going to put in sport mode, and it pulls and it revs all the way to 6,000 rpm. For such a tiny engine, you're able to accelerate from 0 to 100 in about 14 seconds and reach a top speed of about 165 kilometers an hour. Now all that power sent to the front is, like I mentioned, courtesy of the 6-speed automatic transmission with Tiptronic to allow you to toggle through the gearboxes, and of course it lands and mimics your driving style in automatic mode. So if you're driving aggressively, it will hang on to the lower gears to give you that extra torque that you deserve to overtake and just feel the car feeling peppy. Now in terms of handling and suspension, this particular car actually has impressed me. Being a small car, you'd probably assume that most manufacturers would skimp on the quality, but this one, they've actually have a lot of sound deadening equipment on the transmission tunnel just to make sure that it's quiet. It is very quiet. You can actually have a good time driving this car. It's smooth, it doesn't have that vibration that you normally feel on the lower end of the spectrum of vehicles, and of course it feels like you're driving a Tucson or a Santa Fe, for that matter, in a small size, and that is something so important. So obviously, again, the name of the game as well is the suspension quality, the ride handling. Up front you do have tuned McPherson struts. At the back you have a rear torsion beam axle that allows this car to be planted even on very curvy surfaces, and of course insulates the cabin from the vibrations on the road, which is very, very important. However, when it comes to safety, the most important thing in any family vehicle is the safety aspect. So what have Hyundai done? They've actually loaded this car with quite a number of things. From the active front, you do have anti-lock braking system with electronic brake force distribution. For those who are wondering, electronic brake force distribution is sometimes when you're in an emergency and you press the brake pedal hard, the distribution of pressure to all the four wheels might vary depending on how you pulsate or you modulate the gearbox. Now, like I said earlier, that system allows this car to have even brake force distribution on all four wheels to allow you to have a shorter stopping distance. Apart from that, you do have dual airbags for the passengers, of course, and it has a very sturdy passenger cell to allow impact energy to dissipate away from the cabin, which is very, very important. But like I said earlier, this particular car is built for the city. It's built for the urban commute, and I can tell you for a fact, even for a small family, this car is very comfortable, it's reliable, it's got all the bells and whistles you can ever think of. Plus, it has absolute value for money. Hyundai are now in this game to stay. Remember in the 90s when Hyundai was still starting up, they were still learning the process of building vehicles. Remember the Atos, those vehicles, the Elantra. Now, they're actually world leaders in as far as developing good quality vehicles for our market, and that is something so important. That said, guys, it's important to do the value for money proposition of this particular Grand i10 Hyundai. As it stack up with the likes of the Polo Saloon or the Suzuki Swift, let's find out on value for money. Sample this Hyundai Grand i10, and I can tell you there are so many grand things about this particular car when it comes to the design, the comfort, the level of equipment, and of course fuel efficiency. Mr. Murigi, your highlights of this particular Grand i10.
So far, I have to say, just like any of the Hyundais that we've done on this show before, this car matches with its big brothers in punching above its weight. It gives a lot more than you can imagine in terms of, like you said, the engine, the efficiency of the engine, the interior, the size of the interior, how the interior feels, the size of the boot. It's basically punching above its weight on every class. Very impressed with this car.
Speaking of that, how much does it cost on the road?
Well, prices for this start at 1.9 million shillings. This comes with a class-leading 5-year or 100,000 kilometer warranty, whichever comes first.
Wow, that just gives you so much reassurance if you're thinking of purchasing the Grand i10. But finally, Mr. Mwirigi, we know this car exists in an ecosystem where competition is in plenty. Who are the key rivals in this segment?
Well, we're talking about these really small saloon cars, of course, that offer a lot of functionality for the growing family in Kenya. We're looking, of course, now at the competitors for this car being the Suzuki Swift and the Volkswagen Polo saloon car.
Well, guys, what do you think? Do you reckon this particular car is better than the rest? Send us your thoughts as seen on the social media handles below. We'll get back to you next week. Well, signing out, this is Big Boy Trev.
My name is Mwirigi. Drive safe
and be safe.